Hello and welcome to the Scrimshaw Show. My name's Evan Scrimshaw. Nathaniel Arfin's here. We're talking about Buddy Crombie. We have like 25 minutes. So, hey, buddy.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Obviously, I had David Coletto on to do federal politics earlier this week. You still have not listened to the show because you are a piece of shit who just doesn't care about me at all, are you?
That's correct. Yes, you got me pegged.
Obviously, listen to that if you haven't yet already. Very grateful. Very grateful. I was not expecting that to be how you responded. Obviously, very grateful to David for his time. I'm very glad that I am very, very thankful to David for his time, and I look forward to hopefully having him back on the show next year. He sounds eager to do it. So, yeah, you had your experience in me being extremely nervous. So can we just spend 90 seconds talking about how much of a fucking nervous wreck I was, despite the fact that I don't know if I told you this. I asked Coletto if he wanted to do the podcast at some point in December. I asked him on Thanksgiving Day, okay, or American Thanksgiving.
Sure. Oh wow.
Would you like? I was watching the live game. I'm like, screw it. I'm gonna ask him. I'm gonna ask Nate or Smith. I thought about having Nate and Coletto as end of year podcasts. I've decided I'm gonna email Nate in the new year and ask him if he wants to come on. I feel fine saying this. I think Nate's gonna say yes if the schedule allows, and I think it'll be easier to get him in January than in December. But my hope is to have Nate on in the sort of as like a table setter for the winter parliamentary session. But I emailed David. He responded 2 minutes later saying yes, he was in. And I was a nervous fucking wreck before we recorded. 2 minutes saying, psychologize me, please.
He seems like a great guy. I mean, I very much need to listen to the episode.
You've listened to half of it.
Yeah.
Bonnie Crombie released the housing plan this week. Thoughts?
I do not know what the conservatives are going to do to oppose this. I mean, right away out of the gates, they have come out and basically said she's lying, and that's what they're going with.
The funny so.
Oh, sorry, I have to. 1 second. Breaking news. Wham, wham, wham. The Ford government is extending the legislature's winter recess. 2 weeks extra Christmas for Doug Ford.
By ending early or by moving the start date back?
Moving the start date back. They will be adjourning until March the 3rd.
That sounds to me like they might not be coming back.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that in a minute. So I've obviously written a version of, can either the feds or the province just please offer a housing accelerator-esque fund to force municipalities into cutting DCs, right? Cutting DCs. What Bonnie Crombie has said is fuck cutting DCs. We're just eliminating them for anything under
3,000
square feet, I believe.
3,000, yep.
3,000 a unit, which is a key distinction, right? So an apartment complex, is no DCs on apartment complexes, right? There's no, whatever. If you would like to build your McMansions in Vaughan, you're still going to pay a DC, right? But if you would like to build useful housing, you're free. I have been begging for like half a loaf compared to what Bonnie did. I'm in love. I'm in fucking love. The rent, like, I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert on this phased in rent control on the Manitoba model. I don't know. So, enough smart people on housing are in favor of it that I'm tentatively good. the ending the backlog at the land board and the landlord tenant board is very good policy, and ending the land transfer tax is again very good policy.
So the land transfer tax, very quickly, it's for seniors who are looking to downsize. It is for nonprofit corporations looking to build homes, and it is for first-time homebuyers. So what this does is it effectively makes it cheaper for three big segments of the housing purchasing market who should have more access than other people. It's taking away a fee from them. It's fantastic policy.
It's truly incredible, and I'm very, very excited for it. I think so obviously it's a great policy on its own merits and everything. I think the bigger conversation about it is obviously this comes after, Jesus Christ, it feels like it was 3 weeks ago. But last week when Bonnie announced her doctors, her every family having a family doctor policy within 4 years, and and her leaders dinner speech where she talked about, one of the things was, that Doug Ford is too focused on, helping, foreign spa owners and whatever, and isn't sufficiently focused on the issues that actually animate people, including encampments. And of course, she voted, or her MPPs voted, for the closure of a majority of Ontario's safe injection sites. I was extremely critical of Bonnie last week, to the extent that I wrote one of the longest pieces in the history of Scripted Unscripted. Obviously, the longest piece in the history of Scripted Unscripted is the transcript of the podcast of David Coletto. But in terms of authentically new content, I think that is one of the longest. It was, nearly 2,600 words, I believe. You obviously are somebody who cares deeply about safe injection, who believes that that Bonnie's vote is wrong. Make the case why she's wrong, and make the case for why, if Crombie wants to actually help the kinds of people who end up in encampments, why that safe injection vote is a mistake.
So Bill 223, the bill that ended with the closure of multiple safe injection sites and also bans the opening of new safe injection sites, effectively ending the safer supply program and safer supply in general. This is a bill that will kill people. And I'm not exaggerating with this. I'm not being hyperbolic. They are taking away people's ability to source clean needles within their communities and to source drugs that are known to be not poisoned. Right now, in Canada, the fentanyl crisis, the opioid epidemic, these issues, they're not going to go away because we try to sweep them under the rug. What's going to happen is people are going to continue to access drugs in increasingly unsafe ways, and they will continue to act in antisocial manners. The reason the majority of the safe supply locations are where they are, the safe injection sites are where they are, is because those are areas known to the community as places where people consume drugs. They're purposely put into communities and places where it will attract less risky behavior, not risky behavior, but less risky behavior. The other thing about safe injection sites and safer supply is they are tied into the recovery and care programs on a larger scale. Once someone goes into a safe injection site, they're starting the process to recovery because they're connecting with care providers who can connect them with resources to start their recovery. I understand that people don't like seeing drugs being used in the streets. It's incredibly uncomfortable. I know that.
Here's the thing. If you close safe injection sites, right? So I used to walk home about, what would that have been? 600-ish meters, I believe. We did it one time, but it was about 600 meters, and I did that walk for I did that walk for 4 years of my elementary school life. I did that walk home alone. Okay. Again, 600 meters is sort of very safe part of Canada. You know, my older brother was at high school and my mother was working. Both my parents were working. There was nothing I could do, right? Like literally, if I was going to get home from school, I needed to walk it alone. There was no alternative solution. It was fine. But there were two ways I could walk home, and one of them, you know, theoretically, if I wanted to walk it, you know, is the kind of place where there could be that kind of thing. And if you want to decrease the chance that your grade 5, grade 6, grade 7, grade 8 kid, right, your 10 to 14-year-old, or even younger, depending on where in Toronto, is going to see, or Toronto or anywhere in the province, obviously, but, you know, in some of these cities, you would like to decrease the chances that your 9-year-old walking home from school sees somebody, you know, doing crack or snorting cocaine or shooting up with heroin, or even just exhibiting the symptoms and the consequences of doing those drugs. Safe injection is good because, spoiler alert, if you're in a safe injection site, you're doing the vice of your addiction in a supervised place, and you're not just doing it in a goddamn fucking park. Your kid's trying to cut home to, because it saves 5 minutes walking from school. So it feels like it's not a good idea. Now, the argument I made in the piece I wrote, recording this Thursday, it's hopefully going up Thursday. The case I made in the piece was that Crombie has done a sufficient amount for the left of the party and the progressive movement in general to bite their tongues, to accept that Crombie is a leader who can be reasoned with, and that progressives need to get on board or risk another big Ford majority, right? Obviously, I don't love Crombie. I have never particularly shied away from it. And I frankly stand by everything I wrote last week, which is that Crombie is fundamentally a leader, a severely flawed leader who is making big mistakes, right? On safe injection, on communication strategy, the fact that she's not doing, you know, the fact that she is announcing these policies and then not doing anything with them, not doing province-wide tours, not using earned media, is a big fucking problem, right? I stand by everything I said in that. But at the end of the day, if we have moved Bonnie Crombie from being the NIMBYest mayor in Canada to the most progressive YIMBY politician in the country, then at the end, then she has proven that she can be moved on issues, and she is the vehicle and the vessel that we need to back to achieve progressive outcomes in Ontario. Do you agree? And by the way, respectfully, I respect you a lot, Arfin, for all the sort of, you know, for all the sort of faux animus that we do on these podcasts. I have a huge amount of respect for you. You are the kind of progressive that I'm yelling at in that call today to get on board. So make the case for or against.
I mostly agree with this in concept. The big thing that I have that continues to hold me back is, I mean, it's votes like Bill 223 in which he's coming out and against effectively. So let me back up. Bill 223 and the removal of safe injection sites, this wasn't just the Liberal Party has, you know, some of the members voting for. It doesn't seem like it was a free vote. This very, very much seems to me that it was a whipped vote. the only people who did not vote in favor were Adel Shamji, Stephanie Bowman, and Mary Margaret McMahon of the Liberal Caucus, I believe. Forgive me.
No, there were only four. There were only four Liberal MPPs who voted for the bill, I believe, but they were the only four who voted in general, and I don't know if the other five were in the House at the time of the vote.
But it's notable that Adel wasn't on the list of people who voted in favor. It to me, this feels very much like the Liberals were sending a signal as to who they have chosen to be. And the big problem that I have with that is that Bill 223 is fundamentally an anti-science piece of legislation. This is not what experts recommend, and that's problematic. We can't go into social issues and assume that because the optics of it are bad, that we have to take the other side. The Liberal Party has to continue to fight for human rights and the values that this party has to represent. And that includes housing, infrastructure, healthcare, and healthcare.
How can you look at the US? How can you look at the US election? How can you look at the rise of anti-woke, explicitly anti-woke politics? How can you look at the way that minority communities in Texas, California, Florida, New York, and by the way, British motherfucking Columbia have trended right this year and go, what we need to do is stand up for the human rights of drug users?
This isn't about the human rights of drug users. This is about
but here's the thing. If we're talking about safe injection, it is about this. It is about the human rights of those people who have fallen into dependency and addiction, and those things are obviously should be cured, and obviously failure or falling into those things is not sort of a life sentence to terribleness, and it's not a excuse to justify terrible treatment. But political necessity does require winning elections. We are a party with 9 seats. At what point does electoral necessity matter?
Do you think it would have significantly hindered the electorability of the Ontario Liberals if they had voted against Bill 223?
Voted against, yes. Abstained, no. If I were Crombie, I would. If I were advising Crombie, I would have said to abstain. I would have said abstain. Say yes, there are reasonable concerns about the proximity of these sites to schools, but we are not necessarily in favor of closing them until other accommodations could be found.
And this is one of the big issues with the supermajority power of Doug Ford's government. They're able to ram these bills through. And I mean, you look at 223, it's an omnibus bill. There's probably 7 or 8 various different clauses affecting different things
which is an argument for the Ontario Liberals being electorally useful.
That is true.
Like this is the thing, right? I don't like the vote any more than you do. I'm not a fan of the vote any more than you are, right? But at the end of the day, we have to win, right? And if Crombie really was Doug Ford in a pantsuit, right? Then I'd be with you that it wasn't worth fighting. But how do you look at this housing policy and not say that this is a party, this is a leader that is willing to be moved, right? Because the thing is, for good or for ill, Bonnie Crombie has moved on housing. And by the way, to anybody in the leader's office or near, fuck this Bonnie Crombie has never supported a carbon tax bullshit. She's on the record from her campaign saying it. She supported Stéphane Dion. Like that line isn't going to work. You know what line will work? I used to support a carbon tax. I was wrong then, I'm right now. That line will work because you know what? A hell of a lot of Ontarians have voted for political parties that used to support a carbon tax right, that voted in 2019 and 2021 for pro-carbon tax parties and are now deeply opposed to the carbon tax. So just admit you're one of those people. But the thing about this is Crombie has moved on housing, right? On a deeply important issue that she was vehemently opposed to, right? Do you remember when Scott Aitchison called her out for a Mississauga council meeting while she was running for Ontario Liberal leader? And she got incredibly defensive and used a number of fucking cranes in the sky to defend her policy and to say we didn't need to do anymore. She has gone from that to eliminating development charges.
Yeah, to coming up with the best, most progressive housing policy in probably
in what 18, 19, 20 months?
Yeah.
So how do you look at that and not say this is a leader we can work with? This is a party we can work with. Adil, who is the Adil Shamji, who is the who is the health spokesperson, right? Is very clearly a smart guy who knows what the fuck he's talking about. Crombie seems like she's a leader who gives broad discretion to her critics to run her party in a serious or run their sort of fiefdoms in a serious, incredible way, right? She appointed a Nate supporting climate critic, and that critic Mary Margaret McMahon.
Yes.
So people with three names, I always worry I'm inverting names. Like it took me like 4 fucking years to get Jody Wilson-Raybould's name correct because I'm like, is it Raybould Wilson or Wilson Raybould? Like, never could fucking remember.
When you said that just now, I was sure you said it wrong, but then I did the initials. And you got it right.
This is my point, right? Like, I suck at people with 3 names, but like, you appoint Mary to the environment critic position, knowing that you need a Nate supporter there if you're going to come out against a consumer carbon tax. Like, I have a lot of criticism of Bonnie, but how do you look at this housing announcement and not feel optimistic that she is listening to people who have disagreed with her before, who have supported Nate in the past? Like, how do you not come out of that and say, this is a party that is worth fighting for because this is the leader who I can fight with and maybe fucking win?
I worry about a lot of the things that she is saying about herself and how that compares to the policies that she said. And I think that this is something that we talked a lot about on the leadership race. She would come out with these very, very well thought out, verbose pieces of campaign literature and backgrounders. And then she would get up on stage and she can't explain it at all. And at a certain point, it's, how much is the leadership office listening entirely, and how much of it is them actually putting forward these ideas? And I mean, there's value to, of course, to her taking the leadership from people, from subject matter experts. There is, and taking leadership from her supporters and the party writ large.
In fairness, I will say, and I actually mean this as a complete compliment to Bonnie's team. The piece I wrote last Wednesday or Thursday, I don't remember when I published it. I think it was Thursday. That piece, like, I have heard from about 5 different people being like, by the way, that piece has been going around OLP circles and everyone is pissed at you. And honestly, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Like, genuinely. I don't care that people are mad at me, but like the fact that piece is going around Bonnie people, right? I'm not saying Bonnie herself has read it, but people in her circle, people in her area of influence, is a very good thing. Because it's clear that people are paying attention, that give a shit what the sort of progressive wing, the Nate wing, whatever you want to call it, whatever nexus that I am a very small part of, they clearly give a shit what we have to say, because if they didn't, my piece wouldn't have led to so many people being like, hey, by the way, everyone in the OLP is pissed at you about this piece. And I think that's a good thing, because if somebody like me has this influence and is able to make this case, then clearly we're in with a fighting chance to move her. And yes, I would love Bonnie to articulate her values more clearly, right? I would love for her to make more clear that because the thing the sort of dichotomy I wrote in the piece was, is Bonnie Crombie a sort of pragmatic progressive who is playing a centrist for the cameras, right? Or is she, and this is a harsh way of putting it, but is she Doug Ford in a red pantsuit who is going to try and convince us that she's a progressive? And I think after the housing policy announcement, I really don't think you can say that she's Doug Ford in a pantsuit. I don't think that criticism holds up anymore.
Well, I've never so much thought she's Doug Ford in a pantsuit, as much as I just don't understand her values or what she's trying to say she is. That's, there was a lot of criticism about this when she came out and said, I'm a centrist. Nobody knows what that means.
Yeah. And look, I think Bonnie, the optimistic case for her is that she got a lot of bad advice very early on from a lot of people who were less influential in federal liberal politics in the Ignatieff era, right? And it seems like those people's influence has waned. It seems like she is it feels like the optimistic case is that the Milton by-election was actually a godsend for the party, because it basically convinced her that a lot of people who claimed to know what they were doing have, don't actually know what they're doing, and she stopped listening to them. And I think if that's the case, I just don't know how you look. I hate the tax cut. I pretend to only be mediocre about the tax cut in writing, because I know more people read my work than listen. But like, the tax cut's a piece of shit, right? Can we just agree on this? It's a tax cut for the upper 50%. It's electorally useful, sure. It's a sack of shit. But I have been told repeatedly by people who know Crombie, by people who are helping Crombie, who are people who are working with Crombie, right, that the tax cut, that they tried to work in something for the bottom 50% through a tax cut, realized that was not the workable solution, and that more is coming. And I have sort of like internalized that, because I respect the people who are telling me this, but I've been like, yeah, I'll trust it when I see it. Now I actually believe that that's true in a way that I didn't before, because she literally just endorsed the ending of development charges. And I would just like to make one point on DCs, okay? Because I wrote this in my column, but I feel like people are missing this, right? Today, let's say you are a developer who wants to build in the sort of northern suburbs of Toronto, right? So you want to build development, the same development. You have the exact same development, sort of, apartment complex, liberalized zoning, multi-use, multi-family stuff, right? In Brampton, Vaughan, and Markham. You know what you have to do to build in those three places? You have to pay 3 different development charge rates. What the absolute fuck are we doing here? Do you know how long it takes to drive from the easternmost point of Brampton to the westernmost point of Markham in good traffic? 15 minutes.
Yeah.
You should not have to pay 3 different fucking tax rates to build the same development there. And Bonnie Crombie, much to her credit, is completely ending that bureaucratic nonsense, which will make it substantially cheaper for developers because they don't have to waste the manpower on administration and compliance costs, which is a completely underrated part of this that I wrote in the piece and I want to make again. It's fucking fantastic. But how can you look at this housing announcement and not be optimistic that she is actually committed to the broad tent that she says she is?
The comments about a lot of this still stems from the fact that we don't know her values, and I think that you wrote to that very well in the piece immediately following the leadership dinner, and it's a big part of the problem because I don't know who she is. When I hear her say we're eliminating identity politics, I hear let's stop fighting for trans youth and let's stop worrying about international affairs, and let's, it's just, what are you saying is more or less my problem with her. I don't ever know what she's saying or who she is when she's saying it.
Okay. But isn't accepting half a loaf better than Doug Ford? Because let's be clear, Merritt Stiles is terrible, right? Merritt Stiles' housing proposal is a completely uncosted housing plan that makes no sense, that no economist thinks pencils out even close to what they're saying, right? For government-owned housing with no sort of sense of what the initial down payment is going to be. No way. And by the way, if you're going to spend 15, 20, 25 billion dollars in a single policy proposal, spoiler alert, you're probably going to raise interest rates on what people are willing to spend that money on, especially given that, let's be very clear here. When was the last time a government spending project cost the amount of money that it was claimed? Right? Like Mary Stiles can say it's going to cost $15 billion for Homes Ontario or whatever. It's probably going to cost 45, knowing the way that these things work, right?
Absolutely.
So why should we take? So Merritt Stiles, of course, also was willing to entertain the idea of letting in a rape denialist back into caucus. She has proposed zero solutions on healthcare or education. Her big fucking solution on, one of the first policy proposals the Ontario NDP, I know I have harped on this 1,000 times, I'm going to harp on it 1,000 more, was banning protests outside drag bars, which is the exact kind of thing that is going to speed run the other Thunder Bay seat, Windsor West, Oshawa, Niagara Center, etc., speed run that shit to the NDP, to the PCPO, right? Because frankly, why the fuck are the protection of drag bars a fucking high priority? Merritt Stiles fucking sucks. Mike Schreier isn't going to be Schreiner.
Yeah, Schreiner.
He is not going to win. Respectfully, I don't.
They're not going to win.
Want to treat I don't like being dismissive of the Green Party, but also you're not going to win, so you are not in this conversation. At some point, I am willing to accept. I need a bare minimum from Bonnie to get on board. She's given us half a loaf, and at the end of the day, isn't it better to have an insufficiently progressive premier who we can push to the left once in government than to have Doug motherfucking Ford have 85 seats again?
Absolutely. And I do think that is part of politics, is compromise and finding middle ground. I'm not going to agree. I mean, and that's, I'm to the left of the majority of Canadians, and I can acknowledge that. And that's why I'm not super upset every single time that my policies aren't advanced. I know that I'm not going to get the super labor-friendly liberals that I would love to have, but at the end of the day,
the thing is, I actually think we can probably move Bonnie left on labor issues.
But the big thing,
she keeps showing up to every union event that she's invited to, which is a start.
I have a difficult time making space for policies which enable death. And
I am not really here to defend the safe injection site vote, other than to say it was passing anyways.
It absolutely was.
It was passing anyways. I would have voted to abstain, but look, here's the thing, right? The election is going to be in, probably within the next 6 months, right? I'd be shocked if polling day was not within the next six months. My understanding, and it's backed up by what you've just told me about the delay, is that Nick Cuvelis is going to go in the field at some point, whatever they think the date is. They're going to check one last time to make sure that the electorate hasn't shifted, and then they're going to go.
Yeah. Because
the thing about Ford is that the federal budget's probably going to be April, right? And I'm not expecting you to comment on anything federal related, whatever. But federal budget's probably going to be late March, early April. And Ford does not want to be in a situation where the budget topples the federal government, and he has to go in June or July, and he has the first blushes of Prime Minister Polyev. He wants to go before the feds fall. And so I think I have always thought he is going to go late February, announcement, early April election day, right? Sort of something sort of pre-April, pre-Easter. Sort of, I don't know what Easter is next year, but that sort of time, right? That has always made the most sense to me. And if that's the case, then if Crombie were to somehow win the election, then look, dude, if Crombie wins the election on a bad safe injection policy, I will fucking dedicate my entire site to screaming at her to repeal those provisions of 223. Okay? I'll do it. But I think you have to agree with me that it is better to have her there than Ford, because we both agree that Stiles is a dead fucking duck who is not going to do what we need her to do.
I agree with that. Yes.
And the thing that I wrote in the piece today, and I mean this like genuinely, sincerely, right? Is that what those of us who supported Nate want is not for Bonnie to become a cheap copy of him, but to know that we will be listened to and not dismissed. And I mean that, because frankly, if Bonnie were to just like sort of, amp the language of Nate Erskine-Smith, right? If she were to try and be Nate in a pantsuit, right? That would be completely disingenuous. And we wouldn't want that.
Yeah.
What we want is her to be authentic to herself. And we want to know what an authentic Bonnie Crombie is, right? Have her talk about her music taste, have her talk about her favorite movies. There's a moment at the end of the podcast. I'm going to ask you this. What's your favorite Christmas movie?
My favorite Christmas movie?
Yes.
Oh, that is a heavy question. I wasn't expecting.
Think about it. Think about it for 30 seconds. I'm bringing this up for a reason, and it relates to Bonnie Crombie, right? So I asked David Coletto this question when I had him on the podcast earlier this week, and he said National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, and I got so mad for this because that movie is fucking garbage. It is one of the worst things I have ever seen in my life. But it was good content. It was funny, because I fucking hate that movie, and and it's his favorite. And, I made fun of him for being a geriatric millennial, and it was great. It was fun. It was funny. It showed me something, showed me something about him. He told me a funny story about, him watching it as a kid. Like, great, right? Bonnie, give me something like that. That's all I'm fucking asking. What's the music that gets you up in the morning? What's the song that you fucking cried to? My mother has told me this story so many goddamn times. this is a woman who loves Springsteen. I went and saw Bruce with her in 2012. I went and saw Bruce with her in Ottawa, but like she's always had a soft spot for Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin, because that was one of the only songs that you could slow dance to when she would go to like school dances in high school in Montreal in the 70s. By the way, I love Stairway to Heaven. It's such a good song. But like that tells you something about the person, right? Like I love knowing this shit about people because it tells you something. And Bonnie, tell me what your favorite Christmas movie is, for fuck's sakes.
Yeah, that I'm gonna go with It's a Wonderful Life. I feel like I'm immediately regretting that decision, but I'm gonna stick with it. No, Miracle on 34th Street.
Oh wow, you're a Miracle on 34th Street guy?
Yes, I very much am.
That was our Christmas Eve movie.
Wait, which one?
For years and years. The original, obviously.
Oh, okay. So I like the one with the little girl from the other movie there.
Jesus fucking Christ! You like the remake?
Yeah, with Richard Attenborough.
Fucking Christ!
And Perkins and Dylan McGriffin.
This is my point. You learn things about people. Bonnie, tell me what your fucking favorite Christmas movie is. Please. But this is the shit. Like, it's funny, it's good content, and it's a way to make people understand you better. Like, I like, this is a joke, and this is funny, and this is, whatever.
And we're all just people.
But like, it humanizes you. Please give us something. Give me, like, I don't know, man. Like, give me something. Because the thing about Bonnie, look, I feel way more optimistic about Crombie than I basically have at any point, right? This housing policy is incredible, and I want her to win now. And like, I've wanted her to win this entire time intellectually, but viscerally, I'm on board viscerally now in a way that I was only intellectually before. I want her to win now. I want to be wrong about Bonnie Crombie now. And I really... The thing I reckoned with last night when I wrote that piece is that I to the extent that I have any influence, I have influence over people like you and people like me, right? Left-wing people who supported Nate, who want a more progressive party and a more progressive province. And the thing that I realized last night is, like, if I don't use that influence for good, I'm gonna feel like shit if Doug Ford wins again. And so at this point, yeah, I'm kind of all in, just because she has passed the sort of like basic test of competence to me. And like, at this point, I don't see a better option. And at that point, I feel like at the point at which there isn't a better option, I feel like we just have to support her.
Yeah, I can definitely get that, and I will likely come around. I don't see myself at the moment supporting any other party for that. That's for sure.
I mean, that is as much about Styles as just complete incompetence. By the way, did I tell you that Meredith Styles unfollowed me, following me because I was critical of her?
That's no fun.
Yeah, no, she is running an illuminous rank of people who have unfollowed me this year. Be critical of them, but we're not going to litigate that on the podcast. At Nathaniel Arfin on Twitter, although I don't think you're going to be tweeting much anymore. At Scrimshaw_show for the podcast. At eScrimshaw for me. Listen to the football show that I did with Arfin, which is going to be coming out tomorrow, because I'm going to put this up first. I've done 4 podcasts this week. Wow. David Coletto on Monday. I did an F1 podcast with a friend of mine on Wednesday. This is the Ontario podcast on Thursday, and Friday is going to be NFL picks. I'm really hoping I can have you on for the rest of the football season.
I do think that will keep happening.
Yeah, no. I'm honestly gonna try and do a 3-man weave with me, you, and my buddy Ryan Jacobeski for at least one of the playoff rounds for the football show, because I haven't podcasted with Ryan in a while, and also the NFL. So the playoff schedule is the playoff schedule like the weekend before my birthday. My birthday is a Monday this year. My birthday is actually the college national championship game day, so that's fun for me, I guess. It's also inauguration day, so that's a 1-2 punch for me. But I'm gonna try and basically birthday guilt trip Jacobeski and you into recording a podcast at the same time for around. Because that's what that is what I am capable of doing to people. I appreciate you, Arfin. I know I've kept you longer than we were originally talking about, but we had more to say about this. I'm just gonna say I don't know if we're gonna record a politics podcast before the end of the year. Mostly because I don't really think there's going to be much political news. I would just like to say I greatly appreciate you. I greatly appreciate the time that you have given this podcast. I greatly appreciate the words that you have committed to my website. And I just greatly appreciate you, buddy.
I appreciate you too.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.